We talked about like degrees of separation really mattering in a stealth lease project. What are some other factors that you think about and you're considering, and not just getting separation, but how are you structuring the team? How are you keeping information organized? You mentioned not forwarding emails. What's like kind of your go-to processes?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, you're going to limit, the knowledge of, how many people in your company know who the client is, right?
Mm.
So, it's essentially one billing person and maybe the project manager. That's it. And so the second thing is you want to use like platforms where all your correspondence isn't through a bunch of emails, right? It's through a project management tool. We use Basecamp. There's others out there that you can thread your conversations and it's not passed along. So you can take screenshots of whatever you're doing and pass that on to a client to get information. We've even set clients up under stealth names in Basecamp so they can see what's going on, but nobody knows who they are, right? So you want to you want to be able to provide information to your client, but not expose them, right?
Mm.
So things like that, project management tools are important, so you don't have the emails going back and forth. Um, However many degrees of separation you can create, the better. The more, the better. Um, we use kind of one of those the main things you see in a leasing project where you've got like information coming from the field to a project manager to in-house to the client and then back, or your addendums, like your lease addendum reviews. Typically that's something that's handled in-house by a client. So that you negotiate a lease with a landowner, they get their attorney involved, the attorney sends you a 6-page addendum that goes to the client. Typically, they review and strike it and redline it. And you have a lot of back and forth. What we do on our jobs is we take one of our in-house landmen contractors. So this is somebody who's, experienced in-house, works for Dudley on a contract basis now. They'll actually mark up that addendum. So they'll serve as an in-house landman. We've got several gentlemen, 20, 30-year landmen who, have spent a career doing this. They're retired now. They want to keep working. They work for Dudley Land and they fit perfectly in those roles because they look at that addendum as an in-house landman would. And essentially they'll mark that up, send that to the client. The client doesn't have to correspond on it. They're like, yep, good. And that kind of creates that. It just prevents, a mistake. Really,
Yeah.
nobody discloses on purpose. It's always a mistake when the word gets out
Mhm.
to your team. Um, Obviously setting up client, stealth names in your databases, stealth billing contacts, things like that. Anything you can do to keep your landmen from finding out are really important and easy steps you can take
Yeah.
to create that separation.
Yeah, and to your point, just to go a little bit more in depth. So whenever you modify a Word document or build a Word document, it keeps track of who that is. Go to file about, you can see who's marked and modified it, who created it, and all those things. So if you're really wanting to be stealth, then that needs to be altered so that your landmen aren't able to just see that, or somebody opening up that document isn't able to see that. And again, with the forwarding of emails and such, you got to be real careful. Not that we don't trust our landmen in the field, but we all know how curious they can be, and they're talking to people, and a lot of times it's a sense of pride with field landmen on who they're working for too. So
Mhm.
it's easy for that to come up in conversation. So all those steps that are small, but you need to be aware of them so that you can keep it on the down low, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to that point, yeah, field landmen are proud of who they work for. It's a big selling factor in negotiating a lease of any kind. You know, most landowners want to know who in the heck this is for and who they're signing an agreement with. And that can be a challenge and it takes time. You know, typically it's not you just go out and go to a landowner and say, I'm Joe Blow Landman will lease your land, that they just sign, right? It's a process. You can expect if you're starting a leasing job for there to be a workup, you got to build that trust and people have to start coming around. And eventually, once the public realizes, like, hey, that they're not coming in here snatching and grabbing little stuff, they've got a big effort going. I feel like there's enough money behind it. The confidence will get there and they'll get behind you.
Mhm.
But it does take time. You got to kind of build up some trust and rapport with people. And It's harder for a field landman to negotiate a stealth lease. It just is. Um, and a lot of work has to be done by a leasing agent to build that trust and, tell them all the things they want to hear. Hey, this is a reputable operator, XYZ, yada, yada. And this is why we're doing it stealth, because we think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
You got to give a value proposition for sure on those types of jobs
Mhm.
as a leasing agent.
Mhm.
But
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it carries out as there's new plays in different spaces, like you mentioned, lithium, other raw materials. So, be interesting to follow. See how if there's any updates. As you know, I think lithium is going to be a big one. Just after our conversation on the podcast, the other episode, and that was fantastic. So, very cool.
Yeah.